I love it when I see that we're live. It says you're live. Hello, everyone, and
Hi.
welcome, welcome to our live stream. This
Yeah,
is
thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. There's already a bunch of people in here. This is one that we're kind of excited about because shadow season is always fun, and even though other people have done live streams on shadow season and what's the shadow, we're adding some stuff, right? I mean, we've
Yeah.
we're it's not going to be the same thing. We're going to go over what the shadow is and what shadow season is really quickly, but we're not going to focus on that. We want to get into some reasons for why we have a shadow and
Yeah,
how it
hopefully some new
develops.
stuff that you haven't heard before.
Yeah, because we've been talking and exchanging our own stories, and I think that this is something that's a little different. We'll be doing more shadow season this whole shadow season. There's a lot more to talk about. I know it's a really popular topic, so this isn't our only live stream on this topic, but we wanted to offer something that was content that we're interested in. At least I know I am. You too, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
am for sure.
I thought so. So anyway, let's hop in and say hi real quick. And I can see that Morg said, I've been loving all the info on the shadow lately. Me too. And hi, there's Jan. Jan is moderating for
Hi,
us.
Jan.
So hi,
And hi,
Velvet.
Cassidy and
Hi, Lisa.
Volunteers.
Hi, Tyler. Yeah, hi,
Renaissance
Cassidy.
Fairy.
Hi, Ren and Lisa. And Storm
Storm the Delta.
is in here. Hi, Ven. Um, we are good. I have my usual backache. I swear. I don't know what I do when the weekend is coming along. If it's that I'm
Like clockwork.
yep, house cleaning and stuff. But I took my Advil, so hopefully it's okay. Hi, Dahlia. So, we're gonna just. Oh, thank you, Morg. Thank you very much. And that reminds me, thank you for anybody who super chats. Thank you to all of our members. Thank you to people who aren't members but who come. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, and hopefully this is going to be please put a fun conversation. Please put your own thoughts and stories in the comments because we're gonna be sharing information, and we want to. I know that this is something that's very um, it's a very popular topic because everybody's got a shadow. Hi, Wojciech. I hope I pronounced that right. Nice to see you. Um,
I'm kind
so
of quiet, Tyler says.
that's because I always do the introduction because I want to make sure I don't forget anything. Philip is going to be talking. Don't worry.
Oh, I wondered if you meant my microphone.
Oh, is that what you mean? The microphone? Okay, here, say something.
Because
Oh,
I did
oh,
get a new one.
you know what? Yeah, you are a little bit quiet. I can turn you
Okay.
up.
I
Go,
okay.
keep talking.
Yeah, I just got a new one and we're kind of playing with the settings and
Yeah,
stuff. So,
yeah. The new mic is
and
awesome.
then
No, the
yeah,
audio
Morg
is low.
says no
Thank
the
you.
audio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
test your mic.
Hope yeah, hopefully that fixes it.
I turn your mic up a bit, and I'm watching you as you need to talk.
Okay. And also hello Hope. I see you just came in.
Yeah, I hope
Let me
it does. He
just see
does.
if I
Does
can.
Philip sound better now? Because I boosted him as well.
Okay, I turned it up louder. So,
There.
hopefully that'll do it.
Is that good? Is that good, everyone? What you
And
know?
hello Melinda.
Hi, Melinda. Don't have when I don't have these my headphones in and I'm just listening through my speakers, Philip's new microphone is awesome. He sounds
Yeah.
really like a full rich sound. Soon as I put in these
And I could always
freaking headphones,
move it closer too.
yeah. Oh, that's good. We'll keep playing with it. Please let us know how things are sounding. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
So we have so much to talk about, and I was expressing doubts that we would get through everything. So I think we will. I think we should just get right in here, and we will hop in and check out comments. But there's just it's such a huge area. So First of all, before we even get into that, I just want, considering last week and the week before when we talked about the, should different kinds of people and how they react to the fact that the world is really fucked up. And if you remember, the type A person was the one who thought that everything would be fine if you just vote for the right person, that the system is going to take care of
Yeah.
itself. And as opposed to never mind the person B right now, but the person C who just doesn't do anything and sits around and just waits for everything to, the revolution to happen, and then everything will be fine. I just want to, put it out there that we don't want to be the kind of person who sits around and does nothing. Even though we understand that voting isn't going to solve everything, however, it's still important to vote. Voting is on Tuesday.
Important.
It's still very important because the other side definitely votes, and we see the way that's going. So I'm just putting it out there. Make sure you vote. The other thing is we're going to do a quick definition of the shadow. I think probably by now, most of you, especially if you've watched Jan's live stream, that's the Mindful Monad, and Morg just talked about shadow as well. So we're not going to go into it a lot. It's basically those parts of yourself aspects of you that you put into a box where you're into your unconscious in a box. And because it's uncomfortable stuff, it's things that you don't like, or it's things that they don't have to always be bad. We'll talk about that, but it's something.
It's a portion of your ego self, and so maybe you've repressed that into your unconscious. Maybe there's aspects of yourself that are considered unacceptable or wrong by your parents or your teachers or even society, different things like that. All of that can have an effect on it. And many of you are probably very familiar with the shadow, but some of you may not be. So that's why we just kind of wanted to briefly touch on what it is. But hopefully some of the stuff that we talk about today will be new while we talk about different examples, of how we repress and all of those different things. And we also wanted to talk about the golden shadow, because we always talk about the shadow on all of our different channels, but many of you may not be familiar with the golden shadow. Did you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Yeah, just it's important to know that people a lot of people think that the shadow is just the bad stuff. So any bad qualities that go into there, but that's not necessarily the case. A lot of good stuff can be put there too, through the same reasons why we put anything in the shadow. And one of the ways is through some sort of like a trauma experience. For example, you could be acting in a certain way thinking you're fine, and somebody reprimands you for it, tells you that it's bad. And what if it's a quality that's good? What if you're a little boy and you're showing a lot of compassion and care and sensitivity, and one of your parents says,
a lot of good qualities are tucked in there.
And I think it's very common for a lot of feminine qualities to be put in there, especially for boys, because you can imagine parents saying, boys don't do this, boys don't act this way. And and just because you're a boy and you're little, you don't know the difference between any of the things that you're expressing. So hearing that could don't be this way, could easily see how that that part gets put down in here. And you later in life, if you want to be a whole person, are going to have to figure out how that happened. But they can be good qualities, compassion and nurturing and
I think a lot of also part of the good qualities in the golden shadow can come from our intense admiration of other people. So you may have heroes and you may see really great qualities in these heroes without realizing that you have those qualities within yourself, and you can actualize those amazing qualities. Maybe you think somebody is just really powerful with their passion and things like that, and you kind of reflect these different qualities onto somebody through your intense admiration of them without realizing that you yourself have those qualities and you can bring them out. So that's kind of another aspect of the golden shadow.
Yeah, if you've repressed qualities that you didn't think you could have, that would be something that would go in there, and they could be, like you said, positive qualities. And I know Lisa just said you never thought about that, and it's very true. You could be someone who's naturally very generous, and we think of that as a positive quality.
Yeah.
But if let's say somebody reprimands you and says stop giving all your stuff away or something when you're a little kid, or you really need to keep things for yourself, and you don't really understand all of this, that is definitely something that you could think, oh, well, over generosity is not a good thing. And of course it's a good thing. Sorry, there's a bug. And so again, it doesn't have to be negative stuff. And just to differentiate the fact that it's not always negative, the golden shadow is the term that's used for anything that's usually perceived as a positive thing. And there's other aspects too of shadow that you could put things like anger, for example. I think is a really common one, into your shadow, where you're not allowed to ever express anger, but sometimes you need anger to use appropriately. And if you don't have access to that, thank you, Ven. Ven just gifted a Hyperion Source membership. That is so kind. That nice Tyler got it. Yay! Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So getting back to these things, because we really do want to get to the big stuff. If you have questions though, and you still don't quite understand shadow itself, and or golden shadow, if you want more info on that, let us know. We can talk about that more. But let's move on. And thank you again, and congratulations, Cassidy. I think
so. I thought it would also be good to talk about the difference between the personal and the collective shadow, because as you've seen from our video title today, we were talking about shadow season, but we also want to put emphasis on the personal and the collective shadow. So you may be thinking, what are some components of each of that? What does it mean to have a personal shadow and a collective shadow? Does that mean that it's both are part of me? And so if you think about your personal shadow, that is unconscious information that is unique and personal to you as an individual. So that is stuff that you have repressed. It's part of your unique experiences, your unique ego self that you have tucked away into your shadow because those aspects were difficult to deal with or problematic. But if we also think about it in the collective scale, the collective shadow is unconscious information that is shared by all. So a good example to think about is everybody has a body and everybody has a mind, but there is also a collective mind when we talk about the singularity. So there is a collective shadow of this archetypal content that everybody experiences. It's just that each of us experience that on a deeply personal level. So there are some differences there. And I know some of you out there were part of my whole class, and we talked about the shadow for an entire session, and a lot of you really enjoyed that and had some great thoughts about that. But some of the qualities of the collective shadow, you see that a lot in today's society, because society hates nonconformity. They hate extreme individuality and expression and creativity of individuals. And so that's something that we can see as a common trend. They hate strength of will and sexuality. All of that is found in the collective shadow. You see a lot of negative things come about because of the collective shadow. Hatred and sexism and racism, xenophobia, homophobia, all of those things are a consequence of an unchecked collective shadow.
Yeah, really good point. And we can return to that more. Another thing that we should probably just go over real quickly is what is shadow season? For anybody who doesn't know, why do we call it shadow season? Yeah. What is it? Because this is a Hyperion thing. And it's basically just we as Hyperions are always working on our interstar actualization all the time. This is something that, and we should do more live streams on that, because I've also seen comments that people really want more about that.
Yeah, and it's another popular topic.
Yeah, it is. And we definitely need to do more work on that, I think, in a group, almost like a group discussion type situation. So shadow season is a time of year that we noticed is very, very common for this between the holidays, like basically Halloween through the, New Year's. This time of year, every year, can cause lots of, it's very triggering for many people in lots of
Yeah,
different ways, right? To trigger shadow.
especially because of all of the holidays.
Well, that's the reason. It's holiday season, and um, we get so much stress from having to conform to what society
Yeah.
does. Family stress to conform with what the family does, and it definitely sort of suppresses the individual in that, because you're expected to act a certain way, do all of these things, and it's evidenced by the plethora of movies out there on this subject. It's just such a common thing. Everybody knows it. Comics, go on this topic a lot because we all experience it, and that's why we all
Yeah.
laugh when when somebody makes jokes that we're familiar with. We understand them, and there's also people who just have to really repress their own urges because of this, just to get through the holiday season.
Well, I
And
think it's also a period of isolation and loneliness, especially if people don't have anybody to kind of connect
yeah,
with in that time period. And
that's
also maybe
another
even a little
aspect.
guilt, because society pressures us to give gifts and, look a certain way and act a certain way with all of these different holidays that maybe people aren't feeling like that is something that they want to align with, or,
Yeah, yeah,
so the guilt and the loneliness really kind of bubbles up for a lot of people around
yeah,
this time.
yeah. I think the isolation is, I mean, there's the people who complain about having to overdo things with families, but the people who are very isolated because they don't have connection, they don't have all of that, that causes other issues to come up. It might cause people to be very cynical, to turn into that loner, and not to want to have community, like a lot of connection with people. So it's sort of all over. It's sort of all over the board. You have many, many different ways during this particular time of year that is very shadow related. So we've taken
Yeah.
that and said, let's just call this shadow season. It's a great way to look at your shadow, work on integrating it, and find ways to express in a healthy way how to deal with it, because we're all about that.
Yeah.
So
And I think it's also a good opportunity to kind of temporarily set down those pressures and burdens and expectations of society in order to bring in the new year with kind of a different sort of spirit, I guess is what you could say, and celebrate not only our shadow but also our light, and kind of work to express ourselves, towards the end of the year. And I see a lot of people saying, how can I celebrate shadow season? And there are a lot of different examples for that. You can blow off some emotional and psychological steam, kind of in whatever ways work best for you. But like Susan was saying, you also want to work on inner star actualization. You want to find ways to freely express yourself, without shame or pressure or judgment from other people. Do things in a healthy way, of course, but you can also find different ways to indulge and explore in various shadow pleasures, and sane and healthy ways, of course. But you can also create art and music and do all sorts of different things just to kind of get your creative juices flowing. It should be a fun season to express
absolutely,
yourself.
absolutely, this is not meant to be horrible, like, oh, I have to work on my
Yeah.
shadow. I mean, shadow work is hard work. It's
Yeah.
very emotional, it's very difficult, but the more you understand yourself, the healthier you're going to be in the long run.
Yeah.
And
I think with shadow work, a lot of people visualize, the working through traumas and inner darkness and stuff. And that is a big part of it, like what you said. But we should also kind of give ourselves a time period to relieve some psychological pressures and kind of celebrate our individuality. It's really important to include in that.
yeah, absolutely. So, welcome to new people coming in. I think we're just going to keep going. If you still have questions on shadow season, and golden shadow, anything along those lines, please feel free to put the questions in, and we will, try to get to those. But I think we can now move on, right, Philip, to what we kind of
Yeah.
really wanted to get to. And we have a lot of examples and things that we can talk about. Uh, thank you, Morg. So, uh, why do we have a shadow? Everybody has a shadow. Why do we have a shadow? What purpose does it provide? Well, that was a rhetorical question.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the shadow it's the part of us that we have put somewhere else. But the reason that we do that is to give us time to process something that's happened to us. There's different reasons why we repress things, and if we had to examine them at the moment that something is happening, we would be constantly like slamming into a wall. We'd have to stop and examine things. If we have this place where things get put, we have the ability then later to go in there. Like think of the shadow as like a box that these repressed things get, this unconscious things get put. But later we need to go and look at them. We can pull them out, we can examine them. These are things that are uncomfortable, painful, cause a
yeah.
lot of issues.
And a lot of times things get put into that box unconsciously
Yeah.
because we're not aware of it. And so it's also things that we have to discover about ourselves, things that we were not
Yeah.
aware of in our ego self, in our everyday life.
Yeah.
And so when we kind of tap into that box of things that we have repressed or tucked away because it was psychologically pressuring a little bit of turmoil on our consciousness, we've tucked it away, and now we kind of have to tap into that and rediscover those aspects of ourselves.
Yeah, this is an unconscious process. This isn't something where you say to yourself in the moment, "Oh, this is painful and this hurts and I'm going to think about it later." That would be a conscious thing. And we've all had that happen where we have to carry on with our day, but we know something has happened and we'll go home and think about it and talk to people about it. That's not this. The shadow is something that it's something that's very emotionally overwhelming, very overwhelming and stressful. And your unconscious takes it and puts it in this other place because it's too much for you to handle. But and many people go through their whole lives never looking in there, in that box. They don't know it exists. They don't want to look in there. It takes,
and that could be because of trauma. It may be very difficult to go back and reflect on those different things, like a traumatic event.
Yeah, but also they just don't, they're not even aware that there's this part of them that has been shut off. So what happens when you don't examine things, when you don't look into your shadow, all the behaviors, all the things that have come up, all of the ways you deal with that, because it's still there, it's in your unconscious bubbling away. And if you don't do something, you're going to have a lot of behaviors that are unconscious ways that your shadow is coming up. You just have no idea. And I know Morg said this the other day, but it's very common. It's when you do or say something, maybe you blow up at somebody for something, and you'll say, "Oh, they really triggered me and I just wasn't myself in my response." Well, that's an indication that this other part of you took over. And you could go through your whole life with that happening. And until maybe somebody says to you, "You really should examine your shadow because you keep doing this thing over and over again." And then maybe you go, "Oh, what's a shadow?" And you look into it, and now you're on the track for exploring yourself and figuring out,
kind of finding out what those triggers are.
So
why they trigger you.
So it is unconscious, and it is something that if we don't do it, if we don't examine that and go there, it's going to what's the quote? It's going to dictate our life, and we'll call it fate. So
I think part of that can kind of come from unmet needs too, wouldn't you say?
Okay, so there's I want to get to the unmet needs. I think the most common Okay, well, so the shadow serves this purpose of allowing us to function in the world, where we don't just shut down when something happens to us, or there, whatever it is that is making us repress things. But and there's different ways, reasons for why we do this. One of them, I think the most common one, is that it's going to be that most people realize, oh, something happened to me. That's like a trauma
Yeah,
response,
like a traumatic
a
event.
traumatic event. I'm sure everybody has at some point or another thought to themselves, why do I act this way when this particular kind of thing happens? And you search back and you're like, oh yeah, because I remember my friend said this, or my teacher said that, or my mother, whatever. Somebody did something, said something, and it was traumatic. And you took part of you and you put it into the box, the shadow box. And if you bring it out and examine it and go through the steps of the integration, which if we have time, we'll kind of talk about those things. But I think that has also been discussed, although at some point we should probably do a live stream on integration, because there's a lot to that. But right now, we just wanted to kind of go over the kinds of things that cause us to put stuff in the
kind
box.
of talk through a lot of examples.
Yeah, and we can do that. I mean, trauma, I'm sure all of you could post some kind of trauma, one that happened to you, because there's just so many. I mean, I could list off a bunch of things, but I don't know if we have. Do you want to do some examples? Let us know. I think the next reason is more interesting, frankly, because trauma is something that we can pinpoint if we look for it. But there's another one, and that's unmet needs, which you just mentioned. And this one is near and dear to my heart, because it's one that I never knew existed until I was, I don't know, definitely an adult. And
I think it's definitely harder to identify than trauma.
Absolutely, because an unmet need is something that physiologically, like physically, mentally, some component, something that you need, everyone needs. And what happens if you don't get it? What happens if that doesn't get supplied to you? And there's lots of examples with little kids, because there's many things that a child needs in order to develop properly.
Yeah, like maybe you had cold parents that weren't very loving, nurturing, or maybe you were even poor and didn't have the circumstances to be able to develop in that way and kind of get the needs that you needed for validation and nurturing.
Yeah, you could have parents who are, very, like you said, cold, uncaring, just not good naturally at parenting. And you would have a lack of probably nurturing and comfort, and having the parents who are paying attention to you a lot, really doting on you, and you get that sense of how important you are, in which you need.
There's a lot of emotional structure there.
Yeah, and you could also have parents who are very loving, very well-meaning, and but just have circumstances, either trauma of their own that they haven't worked through and they're trying to focus on, or what if one of your parents is very sick or has a lot of responsibilities, or if they're just financially in trouble and working all the time. All of those things would cause you to not get all the attention you needed, and that would be a lack of something rather than a traumatic event, which is a something. So the unmet needs, I think, is so interesting. I have unmet needs, which took me a long time to discover. I didn't realize, you're always looking for something that happened to you, right, Philip? I mean, it's easier to kind of constantly saying, what caused this? But if it's a lack, it's harder.
I was just thinking about that a lot too, because In certain scenarios, if you think about a family where maybe they didn't tell their children that they love them as often, or they were emotionally distant, somebody might grow up and not know how to interact with other people in that way because they didn't have those needs met. Like what I said about emotional structure, that's really kind of important for growth. And if that's not present, that can lead to some of these unmet needs. And that's just one example of many different examples.
Yeah, of many different examples. And I know that, I mean, the one with me, which it was kind of like a bomb, bombshell when I finally realized, because I was looking for something that happened when I realized, oh, it was, I don't know who pointed this out to me or how I discovered it, but it was not when I was a kid. I mean, I was definitely an adult, and it was that I did not get that sense of security that that you need in order to develop a solid sense of self. And I remember going through a lot of my life early, but also, my early adulthood, feeling very unstable. Like, why do other people seem to really have a good hold on themselves? And I was raised, I mean, as I've talked about before, just by, it's kind of unfortunate, but two parents who were very, very, solid in who they were and what they wanted. And they were busy. That was basically it, not for lack of love or anything else. I had really, I mean, they were great parents. I mean, I'm taking care of my mom now. As a result, things are kind of, shifted for me. I'm now living with my mom since my dad died, and love her dearly, love them. But it was this lack of really giving me enough. I mean, how much is enough? That's another question. Some kids, if they feel like they're being parented enough, they're like, my best friend had the situation where it was like, too much parenting, leave me alone. And
almost
it was
like smothering.
Yes, and it was funny because I wanted my best friend's mom and she wanted mine. My mom was all about doing things. Let's get out and do stuff. I'm going to take you somewhere. We're going to do things. And her mom was all about being a mom. And it was funny because we used to talk about, we just need to combine them and we'll have the perfect mom. So we used each other's mom a lot to get our needs met, which was kind of cool, actually. But anyway, the unmet needs is, I think, a very interesting one. And I think it's one that you should examine. Because like I said, when you're looking for things inside yourself, when you're looking at your shadow and trying to figure out why you do what you do, why you react the way you react, and act sometimes a way in which you really don't like, those are all signs that there's something there that you need to examine. And the trauma one is easier to find. Don't forget about the unmet needs one. Just try to think what maybe you're lacking, what was missing there. Because once you know that, then you can start to provide that to yourself, and that helps to work through that. I think there's other reasons for why we put things in, other causes, and I'm going to go over that quickly because then I know you have a lot of stuff also to share, Philip. And another one is just your sense of, as you're developing your sense of self, who you are, and basically also the society that the worldview kind, the society that you're existing in together, the traits that you're getting from that. You're kind of picking and choosing and figuring out who you are. And one of those things is what the things that you like that you are, but there's also things that now you are not. And that may also get reinforced by your parents in kind of like possibly traumatic situations. And like a generalized societal one rather than a personal traits might be like religion, really popular one. I mean, one that's going to influence a lot. And that did not influence me. Philip, I'm sure you went through that.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely influenced me in my earlier years.
Yeah, you have to, you think of the characteristics of of whatever religion, and that becomes part of you. And it's very limiting.
Well, also, I think as you grow up with religion, you kind of analyze the different aspects of it that you are identifying with. And in the case of my situation, it was thinking about things that I no longer felt like I identified with, and kind of growing out of the religious aspect, realizing a lot of different contradictions and kind of having to question yourself and kind of think about who you are as a person and kind of how you identify. And I think that's a big part of the development of the self, like what you're talking about.
Yeah, but it sounds like you are also doing shadow work, because you're developing the self, but you're also really asking questions about
Yeah.
who you are as well. I think with a lot of people, it's possibly just unconscious. It's, this is what has been put onto me. This is what I am, which means that these other things I am not. And I think that the religious one is a really, really difficult one to counter when you meet somebody who's a different religion and suddenly their traits are not yours. You don't share the same things. I think that that is going to create a lot of issue. And it's not as easy as just saying, well, I need to be more open or accepting. I think that it definitely attacks that part of yourself that you consider your who you are, your identity. So that can be really difficult.
Yeah, and just really quick, we got a really nice super chat from Paul Cherry. Thank you for that. And Paul says, ritualization, psychodrama, and the use of Jungian archetypes as a tool for self-discovery and integrating and synthesizing different aspects of self. Also, there is a socio-cultural structural aspect.
Yeah.
And I think that's really true.
Yeah, that would be like the part that's not necessarily your personal part, but like the world around you part, which absolutely is there. And thank you so much, Paul, for that. And I think there was something else.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I think wasn't there something else? Oh, that was Ven above that. And thank you again for that. Hi, Kim. So yeah, and welcome. So those are the reasons. Like there's, and there's a lot more examples that we can talk about. There you are, Laura. Hi. I didn't think you'd be able to be here. It's good to see you. You're driving. All right. Well, drive carefully, please.
Yeah, be safe.
Yeah, drive safely. There's Cassidy with that too. Everybody's saying hi to you. Okay, so let's, do you want to go into some examples, or do you want to talk about shadow projection? We have a lot of different things that we want to make sure we get in here.
Well, I think we can run through a few examples of shadow behavior, because in order to understand projection, it's also important to understand the behavior that we are projecting. And so a lot of the times, some of the more familiar things that we look at with the shadow is some of the negative things. And as we talked about before, there are also positive aspects to the shadow. But just kind of to run through some of the negative, I guess, aspects of the shadow, you could talk about sexual repression, and that includes different sexual urges or kinks or desires, or maybe even fantasies that you've had that could be considered taboo and looked down upon by others, which causes you to repress them. And in a lot of different scenarios, that can lead to frustration, anger, because you don't know how to express those parts of yourself, or maybe you don't even understand them or realize that they are there. And that can lead to bottling up those emotions or desires and not acting on them. And so also another negative aspect would be bitterness towards relationship, and that could also tie in with the sexual aspect. So a lot of us may have a deep desire for intimacy, or wanting to connect with others, but we may not be able to act on that because of our shadow content. And that can also lead to addiction. You see that a lot with people talking about addiction to pornography, because they aren't able to act on wanting to connect with others and find relationships. And so one of the most important things, one of the most popular things talked about with the negative aspects of the shadow, is maybe somebody viewing their own inherent homophobia as a flaw, or their homosexuality rather, and projecting that as homophobia onto another person. They may point it out in other people, and that is projection, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later. But There's also insecurities. Susan, you talked a little bit about insecurities with having unmet needs, maybe not defining it actually
Yeah.
as insecurities, but ultimately that's basically what they are. And so in that category, there's a lot of different things. We may judge others when we are afraid of being judged. And that is a good example for bullies. Maybe bullies are bullied at home, and so they hate the way that they are treated, and so they treat others like that, and that's another example of projection.
That's a really, really common one, the
Yeah,
bullying.
the bullying.
And you know how, because we've all seen either movies with bullies or had bullies or just know people who had bullies. My husband was horribly bullied, because he was a Jehovah's Witness, and he was, he was kind of awkward. And it wasn't until he, I don't know, hit whatever grade, where his brilliance in math came out. He was just seen sort of as an average kid, and all of a sudden, math came along, and it was like, oh, he found his thing, and he was really, really good at it. But he was bullied a lot. And just to give an example, in regard with how bullied people turn into bullies because it's projecting, years after his experiences, he was way, way, way into an adult, and had moved on. One of the kids that had bullied him came up to him and apologized to him. And
That's really nice.
well, Brian had a hard time accepting it because of the trauma that he went through. But
Yeah, that's understandable.
it is. But I figured immediately that this kid was probably very bullied at home. It's when you said that, it leads to that, it comes from somewhere, and they do the same thing. I mean, they've studied that. You can almost know that when someone's acting that way, they have experienced that. And I kind of thought right away, wow, I wonder if this adult now, had grown, he must have been through something where he had been through therapy, or been through like AA or something, where you learn about yourself, and then you either make amends or you
Kind of reflect on that.
yeah. And I think that's what he was doing. He saw the opportunity. Now, the person you're talking to, meaning in this case my husband, does not have to accept it, or they don't have to take it in. It's for the other person who's doing the apologizing.
Just to get it out.
Yes, that's their step. It's not demanded that you get forgiven or anything like that. But I just thought that, there you go. When somebody acts that badly, there's a reason that they're doing that, because
Yeah, I
that's
think
not
it's kind of
normal.
a compensation of their own feeling of helplessness or powerlessness.
Absolutely, yeah.
They're compensating for that, and they have to, fix that problem. And so they kind of have a quick temper with other people, or aggressiveness towards other people. Really,
Yeah.
it's a compensation for what's going on inside.
Yeah, I think it's this inner absolute feeling of powerlessness that you, yeah, hurt people, Kim. And I mean, it's true. It's true. There's some kind of unresolved issue. And this leads me to something else, and this probably isn't in any particular order, and I don't think that matters. I think we just want to have a conversation. We just wanted to have a conversation,
Yeah.
and get information out. But I think, I think that one of the important things to realize in shadow work is that it's not just identifying. And I hope we have time to talk about identifying, because there's a couple things that, techniques I have, and I think you do too, that we want to share and hear from you guys too, what you do to try to unravel things. But it's not just about unraveling. It's not just about identifying something. In order to actually heal and become whole, it can't be just like, oh, I recognize that this component is in my shadow. You have to actually go into the shadow area, and you want to do this.
Kind of face it head on.
Yeah, you do. But it doesn't mean it has to be harsh. And that's why therapy can really help. And talking it over with people who you feel safe with, discussing like we're doing now, discussing shadow components can really be helpful. And really sitting down and thinking, being kind to yourself, recognizing that everybody has all of these different components, and that it put yourself in a safe place of mind, because you're going to have to go and really look at things, which means
Yeah,
feeling
you kind of
things.
have to give yourself the opportunity to, like what Susan said, to feel that and to experience those aspects of yourself. Once you've identified it and you face it, you kind of have to give yourself the chance to understand it.
Yeah, you really, it's uncomfortable. And that's why shadow work is hard. It's uncomfortable because you're going to be looking, it's the reason that the stuff got put into there in the first place. So you definitely go in with kindness towards self, and expectations that you're going to be uncomfortable, but that's okay. That in order to grow, in order to actually realize what you're lacking, like that's what I have had to go through with, and still go through, with my unmet needs, but also in traumas, in uh, anything, that aspects of yourself with the personal or with the kind of like the society things. If you don't want to turn into somebody who starts screaming at others that you must think like I do, or adopt these principles, and I'm thinking about religion, for example. If you want to be more open with that, you're going to have to ask, why am I so threatened by something else? And it doesn't mean that you have to adopt this other thing, believe any beliefs, think anything. It's simply um, it's simply recognizing why you get so triggered and respond the way you do. Um, so yeah, so it's more than just finding it, unraveling it. You also have to look at it. I want to look at some comments, because um, Mark said, as a guy in the culture, I grew up in small town Appalachia in the 70s and 80s. Oh, wow. I want to hear more about that, Mark. I had to learn martial arts and show my most persistent bullies that there were limits to how far they could push. If you feel like sharing sometime, you rarely had to fight, but you had to often to show yourself as being up. I had a boyfriend who was a black belt, and he was very short, and for a guy, and didn't bother me at all. Not very short, but he just was not super tall. And I know that's an issue. I know that's an issue for guys. And I think that's the reason that a lot of people like that do that, because it's they feel like I have to have something to, you know, make me be more than I am, more, I don't know, I don't want to use the word menacing, but stronger, whatever aspects they want. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad you rarely had to fight, but you had to show that you could do it. I'd love to hear more about that, Mark. And before I forget, I've started watching your video, and I just haven't had time to finish it. And the beginning is so awesome. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I can already see all these other comments that people loved your show. So I'm going to give you a plug right now so that we don't forget. Mark has a show, Hyperion Midnight. And I think if you can put a link in, you should be able to. You should do that. And I want to hear more about how you're letting us know. Yeah, Mark just said Mark's video was great. I really want to watch the whole thing. And the reason I haven't left a like yet or made a comment is because I haven't gotten through it yet, but I'm getting around to it. It's up on my computer. So please do that. Kim said Mark's show rules. Also putting in a mention also, everybody, you all know, thank you, there Mark just put a link in, for Mindful Monad as well. Everybody knows Jan and Mindful Monad, but if Jan's still here, you do that too. I have had a really busy week and did not get to Jan's this week. I'll have to watch the replays, but anyway, we're already getting very, hi Laura, very, very behind, and we're running out of time.
Well, also we have so much that maybe we could also, since we're in shadow season, we could talk about some of this in our next live stream, which we do have some announcements at the end of our stream today to kind of talk over with you guys.
Yeah, we have to do an update, but let's just finish let's just finish going over as much as we can. And I think we're going to save integration, or let us know in the comments if you guys want that. Do you want to do more more talks on shadow integration, examples of shadow, like particular specifics to yourself? Do you want to share things, and we can talk about stuff? So
Thank you, Elise, for the super chat.
yeah, thank you. Keep it up. We really appreciate that. So, yeah, let us know. Great topic tonight. Got to do some shadow expression at a concert. Oh, I saw that you were at a concert. Awesome. Ren said more talks. Yeah. So, because we like this subject, it's the time of year to do it. So I think we will. But what else can we sneak in tonight, Philip? What other?
Well, we were going to talk just a little bit about projection. And
Go for it.
you know, first we reject and then we project. That's kind of a important little quote that comes up kind of somewhat often. And so when we're actually projecting the shadow content, it's kind of an unconscious process, but that occurs when we take the inner contents of our mind, which is dissociated from our conscious awareness, and we kind of place those characteristics on a person or thing outside of us. And we talked about that with the bullying. We talked about that with a couple of the other examples, like pointing out homosexuality and others when you yourself are inherently homosexual and you can't face that. So it's kind of something that you have to be really careful of when you're doing your shadow work, to kind of realize if you've been projecting, but also to realize what's projected in the collective. So part of the reason why we wanted to do this talk today was to differentiate between the personal shadow and the collective shadow. And in the collective shadow, we see an immense amount of projection. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that results in homophobia, xenophobia, you know, just all different things that are really horrible. Racism, sexism, all of these things that kind of bring a sort of sense of darkness to society. And so what happens is we are redirecting the discomfort or the fear of the hidden aspects of ourselves in order to avoid dealing with them on kind of like a more deeper and meaningful level. And so as we do that personally, the collective also does that. So it's important to do your shadow work, because as we work on ourselves, we are also working on the collective. And so shadow season is a great time for us to do that, while also celebrating and kind of freely expressing ourselves and removing some of those psychological pressures. And there's so much that we could talk about. I think we could probably even do another live stream or two just on the shadow, because it's such a deep topic.
Well, I think that, yeah, from what it's sounding like with you guys, I think we'll do that. And we can take different components and really spend more time talking about that particular thing. I know identifying aspects can be difficult. I know there's lots of methods and things, you know, dream work and writing journals and meditating or void state. But that doesn't, being told to do those things doesn't really help you as much as someone maybe walking you through examples of how they thought of things. Because if someone just said to me,
you can write in a journal all day and you can sit there with your eyes closed all day, but that doesn't help you do the work. You kind of have to understand why you're doing those things.
Yeah. So, for example, simply identifying something about yourself, and maybe ask someone to help you by saying, you know, like, please point out to me if when I do something that you don't think is really me, you know, the way, or you recognize in yourself, and I know I do this, the more practice you have, the better you get at it. But normally it's something you'll realize after the fact, and you'll say, I don't know why I acted like that. I don't know why I was such a baby, or why did that scare me so much, or why did I feel so threatened by this thing? Why did I react? Why did I overreact about something? There was really no need. All of those things are clues that you need to sit down and look at it. And most people don't do that. Most people just say, oh, well, you know, I find blah, blah annoying. And that's why, you know, that's why I got upset. But they don't take the next step, which is, but why? What is it about it? And I know I went through this. I went through this with my mother when I got my first tattoo, which was this one. And she was just horrified, absolutely could not understand why I got a tattoo, just the whole bit. And I said, Mom, like, what is it about it? Like, really? Because it has nothing to do with you. You don't have to like it. No one's asking you to like it, and there's no demands on you. And she had a really hard time with that. And still, as far as I know, hasn't done it. There's nowhere inside her she can go to get the answer, which tells me that it's something very deep. Very.
That's interesting that your parents cared about tattoos, or your mom in particular, because you didn't come from a religious background. I know I did, and a lot of times with religious parents, when it comes to tattoos, they say, "You've ruined the body that God gave you. Your body is your temple," so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting to hear you say that.
I was very surprised at my mom's reaction, because she's all about individuality, representing yourself, doing what you want. And she actually leapt across the room from me when she realized it was real, and in horror, really, and was angry. And she just doesn't know why. She still doesn't. It's something very, very, very deep. But when I have that, I'm curious. I want to know, what is it? What is it about this thing that's bothering me so much? And one of the techniques that I do is I sort of visualize a piece of string that goes inside me deeper and deeper and deeper, and I kind of follow it in. So I'll just sort of probe the topic in general. Maybe somebody said something, or I observed something and it irritated me, or whatever the thing. And I'm like, well, but why? What is it about this? And I'll get some little answer, and I'll go a little bit deeper, and basically until I get to the place where I'm like, oh, ha ha ha, that's it. This is it. I do that. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing that the person did, but you find the element that's similar, and you realize, oh, I don't like that in her because I do that in this way.
Yeah.
And as soon as you identify that, it opens something in you. It opens knowledge about how you behave. And at that,
And a new awareness.
yeah. And now you can then move to like more. You can say, why do I do that? Why did I do that? What is it that I need? Why? What prompted that? What motivated that? And you can go further until you find some sort of cause of something, usually of, oh, this is where this need wasn't met, or this event happened, or you can get there. It's completely possible, but it's how dedicated you are. And self-analysis like this takes practice. The more you do it, the easier it is, and the faster, I find, for me anyway, that the answers will come to me, to the point where sometimes I'll be irritated, and immediately, without even me asking, my own behavior pops into my head, an example, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, that's why it's bothering me, because I did that at this point. Yeah, just I did this very similar thing. So I think that finding techniques that work for you, and we can spend a lot more time, it's already time to go, and we can spend a lot more time talking about these things, but we want to give some updates. Do you want to give a last thought on any point of shadow that you feel needs to be said tonight?
Basically, if I could just sum it up, I would say continue to work on yourself and figure out ways to work on yourself. And I know we'll talk about that more in the future if you would like. But, as I said before, as we work on ourselves on a personal level, we also work on the collective and transform the collective. So I really nail that home a lot. And I did in our whole course when we were talking about the shadow, because we spent a whole session just on the shadow. And it's really important to keep in mind the work will never end, and inner star actualization will never end. There will always be more work to do. So continue to analyze, continue to do your shadow work. And I think you can look forward to us talking about this topic more in the future.
And Velvet, you're not alone in that you're afraid to look at parts of your shadow self. I think everybody has that, which is why you have to go in with compassion And the understanding in yourself, you have to have told yourself that it's not going to be comfortable, but you'll be okay. You'll be
Yeah.
okay. Take it. You don't have to dive into the box and start dragging things up. You take little things. You look at little things. You work through that, and that's why, as Philip's just said, it's a process, because you might think you're done with something, and oh no, you're not. There's still a lot more to do. But this is how you integrate. This is how you find out about all of you, and you allow that to be, and then you can behave in healthy ways because you're in control, and it doesn't mean that every single interaction you have is going to be perfect from then on. We all have this, and we're going to continue to be dealing with it, as Philip said. So anyway, there is a lot more that we can talk about this, and we will. We have to make some announcements, though, real quick before we go. Most of you, I think, by now already know that we were very sad to leave, but also very thank you, Philip. But very much rooting for Joel, who left the movement, but is going to work on whatever projects he decides to work on. And I personally want to thank him for the time and the effort, which was tremendous, that he put into
Yeah,
this, that he
absolutely.
put into the source. So what that means is Philip and I have done some talking, and in the past couple days, and we had to figure out, because we also have commitments. Philip's got his job, and I have my family that I look after. So what we've decided to do, because we don't want to give up, we don't want to give up anything. We don't,
Yeah.
and until the team grows, because we're not leaving it like this, but at the moment this is where we are. We're going to revert back to the live streaming that we did before, where we have our where we have an hour and a half at the end of the month. It's still going to be on Saturdays. It's still at 9:00, but it's the last Saturday of the month. And then we're going to have the secret afterward, the supporters one after that. So
Yeah.
that's not changing. But keep in mind that Philip has a rotating work schedule. So on the times that, unfortunately, the last Saturday of the month would be one that Philip has to work, we will do it the week before that. We'll just flip-flop it, and we will let you guys know. Make sure that you check our Facebook page, because that's kind of where I post things. And also the community board here on YouTube, and hit the bell for the notification things. That helps too.
Yeah, please do. We appreciate all your subscriptions and comments. And I think
Yeah.
another thing that we really want to mention is we want to get back to content creation. And that's kind of where the Hyperion source started, even before I came along. So we're going to kind of revert back to the way that things used to be done, where we put out content and then we have the end of the month live stream. So I think the way that we discussed it is we're going to plan on having 2 video releases a month, and those will be premieres on our usual time slot at 9 p.m. Eastern time on the Saturdays that they release. And so we can still interact with you guys in the comments. It'll be like a live stream sort of environment, but you can see new content from us. And as I said, you will have 2 new videos every month, plus the live stream, plus the secret stream. And I think that'll be really exciting. There's a lot to work on. Susan and I have discussed a lot of different stuff, and we have even more further down the pipeline that we would like to bring to you guys.
Yeah, we have some different ideas that I mentioned in the secret last week, that we're still going to do. So those will be coming up. And yeah, thanks. More. Yeah, premieres are great. Content creation. Can't wait. Thank you, Cassidy. Yeah, we will, excuse me, we will keep you guys updated. So check the Facebook page if you haven't. It's just Hyperion Source on Facebook page. And also the community board here. You don't have to be a channel member in order to see posts that are posted for just anybody who comes to the comes to our channel. So I can post that kind of stuff there. And anything for members, like links to the secret or supporters only, whatever, those go there too, but only, only members can see it. So thank you. Thank you. Yes, Kim. Jewel will be missed, and but Jewel has a lot to offer, so we'll see what he comes up with. I like premieres too, Kim, and that'll be a way where we'll be live in a way, and I'm really enjoying. I have to admit, I'm really enjoying using Adobe Premiere Pro and doing video graphics. I hadn't realized how much I missed that. So.
Yeah, and we appreciate all your likes and comments on the videos that we've already put out. You guys have said some really nice and supportive stuff on there, so that means a lot to us.
It really does. Thank you so much. You guys are the best community. And anyway, that's that. I think I wanted to shout out Mark and Jan, and I know Mark did that. Put that link through, and also hopefully we'll have Mark back on at some point. I don't know. I don't know what your schedule is. I shouldn't say anything, but I'm going to just do real quick for Cassidy. There's Chompers. I keep saying I should do a new picture, but I will eventually get to it. And okay, you guys, this went by so incredibly fast, which we kind of figured it would.
It did.
And
there's
good.
Still a lot to get to.
We'll discuss.
So if you guys would like to give us your suggestions of what more shadow content stuff you would like to hear, you can always comment that on any of our posts, any of our videos. We look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah.
And hearing what you would like to hear.
Any specific areas, like if you just want us to talk about more ways to identify or examples of shadow and golden shadow and how to deal with certain situations that are difficult. I mean, all of that is fine with us because we love this topic too. And hello and goodbye, Elise. I don't know if I said hi to you, but I did see that you were in here. Hi, Vampire Wolf, and anybody else that I missed. So thank you guys very much. And so we are not on next week. And I don't think, and we don't have a video next week. We were planning on taking a vacation anyway, so we're kind of just skipping over next week. That because Philip is off. Philip is working next Saturday too. Yep. Okay, you guys, bye.
There will be stuff coming, so thank you for coming.
Yeah, and yeah, just watch the replay. Thank you, Mark. Yes, we will talk soon, and love you guys too. Thanks, Lisa. All right, bye. Bye, everybody.